There's a moment most of us know, but rarely name. The day finally slows, the noise stops, and for a brief interval, nothing is demanded, no message to answer, no task to complete, no one who needs something from us, just a room, just to quiet. And almost immediately, the creeping starts. A pull toward the phone, toward music, television, anything that fills the space before we have to inhabit it. Not because something is wrong, not because we are anxious about anything specific, just because the silence asks something of us, and we would rather not be in the room when it does. Researchers once placed participants alone in a quiet room with nothing but their thoughts for 30 minutes. Comfortable temperature, no threats, nothing required, and yet, a striking number choose to give themselves painful electric shocks rather than simply sit with the stillness. Physical pain, voluntarily, just to break the quiet. Not because they were broken, not because something was uniquely wrong with them. We would make the same choice. What's worth knowing is that this isn't new. It isn't something technology gave us, or something particular to our distracted century. A French mathematician named Blaise Pascal wrote about this exact restlessness nearly 400 years ago. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room, alone. 400 years, the same room, the same dread. What makes Pascal worth listening to on this is that he didn't always understood it from the outside. He was, for most of his life, a man who had mastered the art of outrunning stillness. A child prodigy who invented one of the first mechanical calculators at 19. A mathematician who made foundational contributions to geometry and probability. A scientist who changed how we understand pressure, fluids, the nature of a vacuum. He moved at a pace that astonished even the most accomplished people of his era, always working, always proving, always arriving somewhere new. Then his health began to fail, gradually, then completely. Years of serious illness, chronic pain, physical collapse that stripped away his ability to work, to produce, to fill the hours with forward motion. The mind that had always moved so fast was, for the first time, made to stop. And in that stillness, in what he hadn't chosen and couldn't escape, Pascal encountered something he had spent his entire life outrunning. Not peace, not enlightenment, just the quiet truth that running had been hiding all along. He called it divertissement, diversion, and he was careful about what he meant. Not entertainment, not rest, a defense. We pursue noise not because it genuinely fulfills us, but because it is loud enough to drown out the question we don't want to hear, about who we actually are, about the distance between the life we are living and the one we sense we might be capable of, about the slow passage of time and what we are doing with it. In Pascal's era, the diversions were hunting, gambling, royal courts, elaborate ceremony. The specific forms don't matter. The function is identical. Keep moving. Stay occupied. Don't let the silence speak long enough to say something true. We have simply become more efficient at this. The elaborate escapes Pascal observed have been miniaturized into rectangle that lives in our pockets. We no longer need to seek distraction. Distraction now seeks us. Every notification, every perfectly timed outplay, every infinite scroll has been engineered to fill exactly the space that silence would otherwise occupy. The attention economy didn't create our fear of stillness. It just recognized that fear as a resource, understood that the restless human mind is a market, and built an entire architecture around our most ancient anxiety. The cost of this accumulates slowly, which is partly why we rarely see it clearly. When we never develop the ability to be alone with ourselves, we become quietly desperate for external reflection. We look at screens not really to connect, but to confirm, to check that we still exist, to feel, however briefly, real and seen. The validation of others becomes structural in a way it was never meant to be. Boredom, which should be a minor inconvenience, starts to register as an emergency, and the things that actually require stillness, genuine creative thought, honest self-examination, the slow work of understanding that we want and who we are, those things become harder to reach because we have trained ourselves to flee the conditions in which they could find us. Pascal once wrote that a king surrounded by entertainers might appear genuinely happy, but take away his diversions for a single afternoon, and he becomes unbearable to himself. We are all kings of that kind now. There's a distinction the philosophers were careful about, and it's worth sitting with. Loneliness and solitude are not the same experience. Loneliness is absence, the painful awareness that something is missing, that the room feels empty in the wrong way. Solitude is different. Solitude is presence, the full, undiluted encounter with yourself, without audience or performance. The first minute of genuine quiet are always the hardest. The mind floods with unresolved things, old anxieties, unfinished conversations, the persistent sense that there's somewhere else we should be. That's not failure, that's withdrawal. That's what happens when something that has always been moving is finally asked to stop. But stay through that first wave and something shifts. The noise settles. Underneath it, something steadier becomes available. Not answers, exactly. Not revelation, just a kind of center. A sense of who we actually are when we aren't producing, consuming, or performing for anyone. Pascal's warning, written from a sickbed in the 17th century, wasn't a condemnation of human weakness. It was recognition, hard-won and honest. He had been the person running fastest. He had to be stopped by illness before he could see clearly. He understood the impulse to flee, not as a distant observer, but as someone who had built his entire life around doing exactly that. So, have most of us, in our own way, with our own particular diversions. The quiet room isn't the enemy. It never was. It's just a place where we finally stop moving fast enough to outrun ourselves. We don't have to solve this tonight. We just have to notice the moment the silence arrives, and sometimes, just once, choose not to fill it. That's enough to begin.